Hi guys, welcome back to Too Cool for Middle School. I'm doing a collaboration today with Bridget from the Lettered Classroom. She was my first teacher YouTuber friend. We started emailing and texting each other a couple of years ago, and it's been so nice to go on this journey with her and kind of have somebody that is similar to me in that we're both teachers and we both do this YouTube thing. So there weren't that many of us at the beginning, so she's so sweet. Check out her video after this one if you haven't already. If you're coming over from her channel, hello, welcome. Please subscribe and introduce yourself below. I would love to get to know you. And I was talking with Bridget and we both went through something last year that we feel like people don't really talk that much about, but it was a little bit difficult for both of us. And so we thought we would make this video about not being a new teacher, but being at a new school. And we were both kind of saying that we thought last year was more difficult than our first year of teaching because we weren't blank slates. Like, we came in with our preconceived notions about how things should go, with just things that we were used to, and then we were in a different setting and it was actually a harder adjustment to switch over to a new school. Now for her, I can't even imagine, because she moved from teaching kindergarten in Alabama to teaching 5th grade in Pennsylvania. So she had to learn all new grade level standards, state standards. She moved from the south to the north. That must have just been a crazy transition. And for me, my move wasn't as dramatic. I actually just moved down the street. So I moved from one school only about 2 miles away to a different middle school, and even though it was only 2 miles away, it is in a different city and in a different district. And to be honest, it felt like an entirely new world. I didn't know anything about this city or this district when I made the transition. I knew that it was a good district and they had just kind of this program that I could get my son into for daycare, and so it was totally the right move for my family. We really felt like this was where I was meant to be, but I didn't realize how different it was going to be just a few miles away. So LA, and probably most major cities, are so interesting in that you have little pockets of neighborhoods where the culture is completely different. So at my previous school, it was a Title I school and the majority of the population was Hispanic. We had a lot of Spanish speakers and it was just a really wonderful, friendly, amazing environment to teach in. I loved the students there. I feel like they really liked teachers. Not all of the students always did their work or always liked the schoolwork part of school, but they really enjoyed their teachers and they wanted to have relationships with us. So it was pretty easy to build relationships with them, and it was just such a rewarding place to work. And I was so sad to leave. Actually, even though I do love my new school and I love my new district, I miss my students and my coworkers from my previous school. That's a little bit hard, leaving behind somewhere that you really did love. So that's a little bit tough for me, even though I know this was the right decision and everything. But in my new situation, the district itself, the school, and the students were quite different. So I thought I would just tell you a little bit about that experience for me. Sometimes I do videos that are more how-to and informational, but sometimes I feel just experience videos are also important, just so that you can kind of see how somebody else handled a situation that you might be going through yourself. Maybe you are also switching schools, or you're thinking about doing it, but you're not sure, how scary that transition is. So it was funny to me how different two districts would be that were just right next to each other. And I have worked at many different schools and I've been in many different districts, but the majority of my time was spent at the district that I had just left. So I did feel pretty used to their way of doing things. But when I came into this new district, they are so trusting of their teachers. I wasn't used to that. So before, we would have these meetings where they would tell us this is your curriculum and this is the percentage of instructional time that you need to dedicate to it. This is the date for the benchmark assessment that your students will take, and this is the date that it needs to be input into Illuminate, and then this is the next date when we will meet and you need to bring a sample, and this is the date when we're going to come to your room, and we expect that you're at this point at the pacing guide, and we're going to be checking on all these things. And so, like, as annoying as that was, at least I knew what was expected of me, and I was just kind of like used to working in that type of an environment. But now at my new district, they are just like, here is a program, here are some resources, get to them when you can, implement them in the way that you see fit, and kind of do what you do. And I'm like, okay, so how many times a week do I need to do this? When are you going to be checking on it? How am I going to be tested? Is there extra credit? Da, 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 da. And they're like, no, you're a teacher. We trust you. Figure it out and make it work. So on one hand, that's so nice because they truly do just trust us as professionals to do our jobs, and they hire very good teachers. Like, all of us are kind of the type of people that are just like, if you give us something, we will do it well because we want to do our jobs well and we want to serve our students well. So they can trust us. They know that we're going to do a good job. But at the same time, I get a little bit nervous with that much freedom because I'm just like, okay, but exactly what do you want? I need to know your expectations because I need to know that I've fulfilled them or exceeded them. And they're just like, no, do what you want. So I've had to adjust to that, and it's kind of funny. And our district is very high achieving, so this seems to work. I mean, I'll tell you a little bit more about my students in a minute, but the students themselves are quite motivated, and we have a very high school graduation rate. I want to say like 99%, and I think that we have like a 98% college acceptance rate, and a lot of our students go to Ivy League schools or really top colleges, so success to them is measured in college acceptance. Like, there are other students and other families that kind of measure success differently, and it's not necessarily wrong one way or the other, but I would say that my students are under a lot of pressure to succeed in a particular way. So it's been very different to work in that environment. And then at my school site, it's one of those schools that just has really rich traditions. It's an old school. They've been around for over 100 years. A lot of the teachers, it seems like, have been there for 100 years. People stay there for a long time. For a lot of people, it was their first job, and this is everything that they've known. And then I would say maybe half of our staff went to our middle school and then the high school, and then after college came back and started working there. So they are just so familiar with the culture of the school and all the special events that we do, and kind of just like the unique quirks and traditions and all that kind of stuff about the school. They really know those things like the back of their hand. And as a new teacher, it was tough to come into that because I felt like every week there was like a tradition I didn't know about, or like an acronym that I had never heard before, or just something that I needed to get done that I wasn't sure which avenue to go about it. I just felt like there was always a lot coming at me, and it was usually good things, like really interesting, fun things, but I just never quite knew what was going on. So for somebody that's kind of a control freak and always wants to feel like I know what's coming next and I know how to prepare for it, it was a bit of a rough year for me because I kind of always felt like I was a step behind. But that actually makes me really excited for next year because I've just at least seen everything once. So I feel like I'll be a lot more prepared. Our staff is so friendly and so welcoming and the nicest people. It's just that they've been in that school and in that district for so many years that I think there were things that they just never even thought to tell me about because they just kind of expected that to be common sense. But for somebody who wasn't born and raised in the district, there was a lot I didn't know. So I'm getting a lot more acclimated now, but I actually still feel like my perspective as an outsider is really important. I think that it's good that I've been in different schools that have done things in different ways. And so I have a little bit of a wider perspective on things. So if you're the new person and you feel like you don't quite understand the new school that you're at, don't discount the information that you come with, because it could actually be really useful to people that don't have a very wide perspective because they've been in the same situation for so long. So I think that I'm actually a valuable asset to our school, and my school makes me feel like I'm a valuable asset. So that's really, really nice. The other thing was that this was my first year as a teacher slash mom, I had Jensen basically right before I started at this new school. I think he was 8 weeks old when I had to go to like new teacher training. My mom came down and helped me with him for a couple weeks, and then he went to daycare when he was 3 months old. So for this entire school year, like I was also figuring out new mom stuff. So I would be new at work, and then I would go home, and it always felt like I didn't quite know what was going on as I was like figuring out how to be a mom. And like just babies change constantly. Like each week you practically have a new baby because they're like doing something different, or they've hit a different milestone, or now they're eating something different, or they need to wear a different size diaper, different size clothes. So you constantly feel like you're trying to keep up. And I felt that way at school. I was stressed, kind of, but I just also knew that it was temporary. Like at school, once I knew something, I knew it. And then, you know, for the rest of the years that I'm there, I will understand that concept. And then with Jensen, you know, babies are new to everybody, and everyone kind of has this learning curve, and eventually you kind of hit your groove as a mom, and they get a little bit older and more independent, and you feel like you have a little better handle on things. So even though I was stressed, I still just always understood that like, okay, this is just kind of a crazy year, and it will get easier as I go. So try and keep that perspective too. So then lastly, it was also kind of a transition for me to work with a really different population of students than I had before. So the majority of the students at our school are Chinese American, and that wasn't a culture that I had been like fully immersed in before, at least not in this way. And if you know me, you know I'm the kind of person that is like hyper aware of my own prejudices and the way that I interact with other cultures, especially as a teacher and a person that's kind of in a position of authority. I don't take that lightly at all. And whenever I'm in a situation where I am really the minority, and that's almost always the case in my life, I really try and put myself in the position of like learner. Like, what can I learn about your culture before I add anything? So I was definitely able to do that this year, and I've learned so much. It's been so much fun actually getting to know these kids at my school. But the beginning of the year was a little bit hard because my kids were, you know, very respectful and very quiet on the first day of school. I mean, they're sixth graders also, so sixth graders kind of tend to be like that. But even for the first few weeks into school, I kind of thought that they didn't like me. Sometimes I just felt like they hated me, because at my old school, even on the first day, like you'd have like 3 girls come up to you at the end of class, and they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, you're my favorite teacher. I'm so glad you're in my class. I love your necklace. This is so much fun." And they're just so eager to get to know you. But these students, it just took longer to get to know them, and they didn't necessarily express like affection in the same way. So later on in the year, like I would get, you know, teacher appreciation notes or like Christmas cards or whatever from them, and they would write the sweetest things, and I'd be like, "Oh really? I didn't even think you liked me." But I just had to get used to that, and it just took longer to build relationships, and the relationships were just sometimes different. I did community circles throughout the whole year, and I think that helped a lot for the kids to get to know each other, and then for me to get to know them, and them to get to know me. I think maybe it just took a little bit longer for them to trust me, which is fine. And there were still some kids that were just very like walled off, and I still feel like I don't know them that well, and you'll probably always have kids like that. And then there were some that are just like really quiet, and they never really spoke up all year. Like they just always said as little as possible and stayed as quiet as possible. But that's another thing, like if that's their personality, I've got to be okay with that, you know? So my kids are really motivated, and their parents hold them to really high standards for the most part. And a lot of them go to school all day, and then they also go to like Chinese language school after school, or tutoring. Some of them go to tutoring until 9 o'clock at night, and most of them like play an instrument and play a sport, and they're really like involved. And I think that's great. Like me and my husband know a lot of families that have their kids in these like Asian basketball leagues. My husband's been coaching in an Asian basketball league for like 5 years, and we are always trying to get to know those families. Like, let us learn from you, like teach me your ways. Your kids are so motivated and such good athletes and good students, and they get so much done in a day, and it's not like they're constantly stressed out. Like a lot of the kids it's just normal to them. So, you know, they're like not really fazed by having to go to tutoring and then go to basketball and then go practice piano and do their homework and go to bed. Like it's just kind of the norm for them, and we actually really like that. We're like, how can we get Jensen to be that way? So I feel like I was able to learn a lot from parents. I mean, there were some things that I had just never experienced before, but again, it just took understanding. Like, a lot of my students don't do chores, and at first I thought that was like so terrible, like you need to be learning these life skills. But for some of the parents, they view like school as their kid's job. Like, you've got school, you've got to do homework, you've got to go to tutoring. Like, you don't need to be concerned about chores. Like, adults can do that. Your job is school. So once I understood things like that made more sense. So again, it was just a matter of like learning, not assuming I knew everything, and just kind of like slowly building trust and slowly building relationships. And I definitely still had kids who were like behavior problems and who were way too loud in class and constantly talked, or they were on their computer games on their Chromebooks or whatever. It's not like it was just a bunch of kids that were like perfect all the time. That's totally not the case. That wouldn't even be fun if that were the case. Some of the things that were new were even just like let's say a kid was playing games on their Chromebook and I asked them like 3 times to stop doing that and they were still on it. You know, I just emailed their parents, and in the past that's not always effective, but usually with kids at this school, the next day they are like taken care of and they have sent me apology email, and their like behavior completely changes. So that's kind of nice. I really have a lot of parent support behind me. And you know, occasionally that means you also get like a little bit too much parent involvement sometimes, but there's just, you know, different pros and cons of different communities. I would say the hardest thing for me was that when I first got to that school, I was like, wow, these kids, they're gonna do fine whether they have me as a teacher or not. No matter who teaches them English, they're gonna learn, they're gonna have a really high reading level, they're still gonna go to college. Like, what do I have to offer them? And I felt like I was kind of wasting my talent as a teacher. And I was down on myself for quite a while because I was just like, I could be making a bigger difference somewhere else. And here I am in this, you know, to me, like easy job where the kids are willing to learn and pretty much willing to give you their respect. And I was just like, what am I doing here? And that was probably the hardest thing for me. And I'm still working that out, like in my own heart. But I really feel like I'm meant to be there. And like, who's to say that these kids don't deserve a good teacher? Like, just because they're not receiving free and reduced lunch doesn't mean that they have like no needs in their life whatsoever. And just because they actually read like, you know, at reading level or above, or maybe just a little bit below, doesn't mean they still don't need like a good teacher to push them and challenge them. And I've grown close to so many of these kids, and I enjoy getting to know them so much. And some of these kids are gonna be like leaders in the world, or leaders in science or math, or are gonna be like these amazing writers. And I have the opportunity to affect these kids that are gonna do great things. I don't wanna get complacent in my job. I don't ever wanna look at it as like, you know, these kids are easy, I don't have to put much work into it. I wanna push myself as hard as I can and still be the best teacher I can be and work really hard at building relationships. And it's really important to me to teach critical thinking skills and empathy and compassion, and to teach my kids to be like morally intelligent and emotionally intelligent. And I feel like I have a responsibility to do that. And it's great that I can, you know, actually focus on that, because I'm not always dealing with behavior issues or like safety issues or whatever. So, I mean, again, like you can tell probably that I'm still kind of like tortured about this and like, am I in the right place? But I really do feel like this is the right place for me, and I still want to make a difference, and I do believe that I still can make a difference here. And I'm looking forward to kind of like uncovering what that difference will be. So anyway, there's kind of a lot going on in my mind. As you can see, like, even though it was just a geographically close move, this has just like opened up a lot for me as a teacher and shown me a lot of different things and challenged me in kind of unexpected ways. So if you've ever been new at a school but you came with experience, let us know down below in the comments what that was like for you and some of the lessons that you learned. And definitely go check out Bridget's video if you haven't already. And thank you so much for watching this video and kind of like letting me bare my soul to you. I feel like I'll have more to say on some of these topics as I kind of like work this out. So if you have requests for certain videos on like any of the many topics that I like brought up and didn't really flesh out, then, you know, let me know down below. I'm actually so excited for this school year to start, and I think next week or the week after, like the floors will be waxed and everything, and I'll be able to go in my classroom, and I'll definitely be vlogging, and I'll definitely show you how I'm like doing the first couple days of school and getting things set up. So I'm really excited for that. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.